In these videos, we're going to create a CSRF prevention system using PHP, and we're going to get ChatGPT to help us. A little bit of history regarding these videos. I recorded these as bonus material for my course, PHP Framework Pro on Gary Clarke Tech. And in that course, what we did is we built an entire framework from scratch just to show students how modern frameworks like Laravel and Symfony are built and what components they consist of and how they all work together. And I deliberately left out some little pieces where I could add some bonus material, and so this is one of those such pieces. Hope you enjoy this one, hope you learned something. If you want to go and then do the full course or just check it out, then I'll leave a link in the description and also at the end of the videos. Have fun. We're now going to consider Cross-Site Request Forgery, aka CSRF, and we need to know how we can prevent our site from cross-site request forgery attacks. I've never actually built one of these before, although I do have a vague understanding of how they work. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to get a little bit of help from ChatGPT on this one, and we're going to get it first to explain cross-site request forgery to us. Even though you might think you understand something, I think having these tools like ChatGPT or any kind of artificial intelligence these days, if you have an extra brain there which can help you understand things a little bit better than what you already do, then they're a great tool. And so we're going to ask it first, what is it? And then we're going to say, hey, can you help us implement some kind of cross-site request forgery prevention in our site? Okay, so usually I've had a practice before I start recording, but here, because we're getting ChatGPT to give us the answers, I'm just going to record this and put the questions to ChatGPT, and then I'll edit it into something cohesive later on. So here's the first question which I've come up with. I would like to add CSRF protection to a PHP framework which I am building. Please could you explain CSRF to me and what the main risk is? So here I'm not asking it to come up with a solution or write me any code. I just want it to help me understand something a little better, because even if I feel like I understand something well, I'll usually try and learn something from ChatGPT before I get it to build a load of code for me. So let's hit go on this. Here is the explanation which it's come up with. It's not brilliant. It maybe could have been worded a little bit better, but we'll have a look at it and then maybe I'll paraphrase some of this and help you understand this a little bit better. So CSRF is a type of online attack where an attacker tricks the victim into executing unwanted actions on a web application in which the victim is authenticated. The main threat behind CSRF is that it doesn't target the victim directly. Instead, it exploits the trust a website has in the user's browser. So you're probably a little bit none the wiser after reading that. So we'll just continue with this, and maybe this is the bit which I'll paraphrase and make it make more sense to you. So it says, imagine you're logged in to your online bank account. Without logging out, you then navigate to a malicious site. Should add here that you don't know it's a malicious site, you think it's a perfectly innocent site. And the malicious site contains a script that sends a request to your bank to transfer money using your credentials. So basically what you've done here, you've logged into your bank, you've done a bit of banking, you're still signed into your bank, but you go to have a look on another site. You think the site's perfectly innocent, but actually it is a malicious site. You may click on an ad or submit a form on there or whatever, and behind the scenes what is actually happening is that site has a script which can contact your bank and perform malicious actions, drain your account or whatever. And the reason why it's able to do that is because you are still authenticated with your bank. And so that's why it's called cross-site request forgery. You're on one site, you think it's a perfectly innocent site, and that site is making the request to the other site, i.e. your bank or whatever other app you're authenticated in. Okay, and then it goes on to explain how to add CSRF protection to your framework. It says, number one, generate a CSRF token. So whenever a user loads a form to submit data, generate a unique random token and store this token in the user's session. And then it says, validate the CSRF token. So when the form is submitted, compare the token from the form with a token stored in the session. So how will this work? You have a token in the session, and then to make sure that you're submitting the request from the same site, you add a hidden form field in the site, and then that hidden form field contains your session token, your CSRF token, and when you submit that form, then it compares that with the token held by the session, and if they match, then you know that this request is being sent from the same site, and only your site will know what that session token is, what that CSRF token is. So it explains some other bits here, such as checking same site cookies, requiring re-authentication, check HTTP referrer headers. We're not going to get into it in that depth. We're going to deal with the solution it's told us here for just generating and checking CSRF tokens, see if any of this is of any use to us. Okay, so we have three main steps here. What we want to do is generate a CSRF token, so we need to find a decent place in our framework to do that. And then what we want to do is add a hidden field in the form which contains that CSRF token. So as you can see here, they are echoing it from the session, retrieving it from the session superglobal and echoing it as the value of a hidden form field. And then when you submit the form, just on the back end, what you want to do is check if that value, that CSRF token value which is being posted, matches the CSRF token value which is held on the server in the session. Our first step here is going to be to generate this CSRF token. Now you can see the way they've done it here is to say bin to hex, and then inside of there call a function called random bytes, and I'm passing in the number 32. So I do understand what this means, however you might not. So let's actually just ask it to explain any lines. Don't just copy and paste stuff from ChatGPT into your code if you don't fully understand it. You can easily just get it to explain lines of code to you. So I'm going to say, please can you explain this line of code to me? And here is our explanation. We don't need an explanation of what this session part is because we know that already. It's these bits here, random bytes and bin to hex. So random bytes generates a cryptographically secure pseudo random bytes. Function is often used for generating random tokens such as CSRF tokens. And here it's being told to generate 32 bytes of random data. And then bin to hex. So this is a PHP function which converts binary data into its hexadecimal representation. And so the reason why we're using this obviously is because it is a more human readable representation of binary data. So if we put this together, it generates 32 bytes of random data using random bytes 32 and then converts those bytes into their hexadecimal representation using bin to hex. So the question I asked after that, and sometimes I'll do this quite a lot, is just to say, is this a standard common way of doing this? Just making sure that it's not giving me a solution which might not be current or might not be secure. And so here basically it just goes through and explains why this is a common solution and why it's perfectly fine to use this. So I think we should be good with this. Let's go and grab some of the code. So what I want to do first of all is actually generate that token. So we'll grab this code here, and we already have a session class. I think a good place to do this will be inside of the session start method. Because we're going to add some more conditionals in here, I'm going to invert this logic a little bit. I'm going to drop this session start down here, and then I'm actually going to invert this question. I'm going to ask a different question. I'm going to say, is the session status active? And if it is, we'll just return from this. So this is what we're going to do now. And then if the session status is active, we're just going to return. Otherwise, we're going to start the session. And then what we're going to do is we're going to save or generate that CSRF token if one isn't already generated. So I will say if this, and we have a has method which checks if a particular key is present on the session, and this will be CSRF token. So if we don't have a CSRF token, we shall set a CSRF token. So this set bin to hex random bytes 32, and in fact we need to actually set the key. Okay, that's what I meant to do. So we're checking, do we have a CSRF token? If we don't, then we're going to set the CSRF token to the value of this. And what this means, if this has worked, is that we should now be able to access that off the session. So let's see how we get on here. Just going to dump this out and go to the browser and give this a refresh. Okay, and we do indeed have a CSRF token. So that is step one taken care of. The next thing we need to do is to go and actually embed this in our form using a hidden field. So that's what we'll take care of in the next one. Okay, the story so far. We've got ChatGPT to explain to us what CSRF is, what the risks are and how it can happen to us. And we didn't ask for it, but it gave us a bit of an explanation of how you can prevent this code-wise, and so we took some of the steps. In fact, we took the first step. We generated a token in our session start method in the previous one, and so now what we need to do is we need to go and add a hidden input field in one of our forms, and that will take the form of this, like it's suggesting here. We'll give it a type of hidden. We'll give it the name CSRF token, or we can call it _token, which is something which I've seen quite commonly done, and then the value of that will be retrieved from the session, and that will be the CSRF token key on the session. So where can we do this? Let's go back to our code and let's start to figure this out. This is where we finished off. We're in the start method of the session.php class. Let's just delete this where we're actually dumping out that where we checked at the end of the last recording. In fact, just before we do that, let's actually go and show the result of that. So here we're dumping out the CSRF token. This is exactly what we see. Okay, so we don't want to dump that out anymore. What we want to do is we want to use it as a value in a hidden field in a form. So I think the first form that we're going to come across in this application, if we have users in the application, is going to be the login. So let's go down to templates, and here we have a login.html.twig. So remember, we're using twig, and then let's just create that form. So input type hidden, name, we'll say _token, and then we need to give it a value. And the way we echo a value in Twig is by using the double curlies. And then where we're going to get this value from, if you remember what we've done in previous, in fact, in other Twig forms, is we were able to get information from the session because we created a special sort of Twig helper, and that was this. So we're able to actually access the session, which means that will give us the session object, and so we should be able to call any of those methods on our session object on there. So all we need to do is just say session get and then ask for the CSRF token key. Okay, so here we're calling that session function, and then we're going to say get, and then we're going to ask for CSRF token. So CSRF _token. Okay, so let's go to that login form. This is it here, and if we inspect the source, I can do right click and say view page source, scroll down a bit. Okay, perfect. So this is the CSRF token, and this is that hidden input field. And so the next step will be to actually take this value from this hidden field when this form is submitted and actually check it against the CSRF token which is held on the session.